Good afternoon. We're Group G, and my name is Khushi Mehrotra. We also have Leyan Li, Yujing Jiang, Zhengyu Zou, and Jiageng Li with us today. Our chosen country is the United States of America, and some of the things that we looked into were globalization and its effect on the political economy of the country, as well as a legal system that an Australian firm should be aware of before entering. We will then analyze both economic development and human development in the country and decide which measure holds greater value. We then assess the cultural distance between the US and Australia and analyze if the cultures are becoming more similar or disparate. We will then identify and explain which industries the US should specialize in when looking to trade with other countries according to theories by both Adam Smith and David Rickard. And finally, we will look at which trade policy instruments does the US government currently employ and which theory of international trade does this use of trade policy instruments support. So for globalization and its effect on the political economy, globalization refers to the increasing interdependence of economies, culture, and inhabitants of the world as a result of technology and cross-border trade in products and services, as well as flow of capital, labor, and information. Globalization has actually helped lift many Australian citizens from extreme poverty and improved the lives of many more. The United States gained an estimated 8% of its annual GDP from about 11% to 19%, and the rise in global trade as a percentage of GDP since the 1950s is thought to have increased global income by around 5 percentage points, and you can see that in the graph. Globalization has really made the US one of the biggest economies in the world because of this massive increase in GDP. The political economy of the country. So the US is a democratic country as its citizens elect its representatives in the office. And the political economy of a nation refers to how political, economic, and legal systems of a country are interdependent, and it's assessed according to the degree to which the country emphasizes collectivism as opposed to individualism and the degree to which the country is democratic. So the US is very democratic, and it is also a federal republic established on representative democracy with 3 departments, which includes the legislative, executive, and judicial. It has a high rate of productivity and adoption of high cutting edge technology. And this is all because of globalization, and its significant sectors include agriculture, which includes things like corn, soy, cattle, and cotton, production of machinery, chemicals, food, and vehicles. And it also has a flourishing tertiary market that is centered on finance, new technologies, insurance, and more. So the legal system basically are rules that regulate behavior, along with the processes by which the laws are enforced and through which redress for grievances is obtained. Some of the things that an Australian firm should consider include contract systems, which is a branch of American law that deals with agreements between individuals, corporations, and organizations, and allows a company to file for a lawsuit in the case of a breach of contract. So with trademark and patent protection, so a patent protects a new idea or finding, and a trademark safeguards the words, phrases, symbols, or designs that are used to indicate origin of goods or services. And in the US, brand or intellectual property protection is said to be a top priority. When you are applying for a patent protection, you need to make sure that the US must be included in the verification. And the government itself actually suggests that you should still register for trademark or patent protection with the Patent and Trademark Office, even if you lack the financial resources to pursue trademark or patent infringement cases. And with copyright, so in the US, copyright is a type of intellectual property law and that safeguards original works And it is optional to register with the Copyright Office, but the government itself actually does advise that you do register in case you do ever need to file a lawsuit for the infringement. And I will now be passing on to Leyan Li.
Thanks for Khushi's speech. And now the topic of my presentation, my part of presentation, is the analysis of the economic and the human development of the US to an Australian company with ambitions to establish overseas market. From the perspective of economic development, the level of productivity of the US is extremely high, and the GDP per capita is 70,248.63 USD in 2021. In addition, the US economy is excessively multi-diversified, which means that it acquires strong risky affordability. Also, the US has one of the highest standards of financial system in the world, a developed infrastructure for domestic citizens, and a very experienced labor force. Unfortunately, the improper distribution of the wealth causes income inequality in the US, and the indicator of the wealth distribution, the Gini coefficient, is 0.49 in 2021, which shows that the household income inequality is still a serious problem for the US government. From the perspective of the human development, the HDI, life expectancy, and the educational rates will be utilized to evaluate the human development of the US. To be more specific, data from the UN illustrates that the HDI of the US is 0.921, which is an exceedingly high level of human development, and it ranked 21st place of the world HDI rank in 2021. Additionally, the rank of life expectancy shows that the average life expectancy of US citizens is 77.28 years, and this average life cycle is slightly more than the global life expectancy. Besides, in 2021, the target group of 25 years and older, 91.1% of them have high school graduation, and particularly 37.9% of them have college or university graduation or more. For the graduation of economic development, the level of internationalization and the level of the benefit returning will follow a positive proportional tendency. An Australian firm needs to prioritize the economic development as the primary element, because a company which wants to enter foreign markets, the profit must be the most important factor to consider. The US has a highly developed economy which is extremely attractive to foreign investment, and if an Australian company transfers to a multinational enterprise, it will be more profitable to the Australian firm. However, there is a case illustrates that the potential consequence of the FDI spillover. To explain it, the new entrant with firm-specific advantages is more likely to cause competition in the host country. To be more specific, if the investment from the Australian company was invested into the US market, the host country firm, which operates in the same industry, will respond effectively and immediately. The US firm will analyze and draw the operational method from the Australian firm, then cause a fierce competitive market, which might make the Australian firm suffer losses. Also, the income inequality needs to be considered by the Australian company, which might influence consumers' consumption. For the measure of human development, currently, given that organization, the operation in a dynamic and complicated environment is necessary for the leadership to make appropriate decisions about the investment in human resources and human capital flexibility. The educational level and the health outcome are equally important for the Australian firm to consider. Due to these factors will generate consequence to the labor force quality and the cost of employees directly. In the long term, the quality of the workforce and the experienced employee will become more beneficial for the Australian firm due to it's not necessary for the Australian firm to invest massive capital in training and developing for staff in the host country. Adversely, Jonas and Egger argue that the existence of home bias makes the stockholders in a particular country more favorable to host security, which can be traded close to their home. And specifically, the potential reason can be related to the discrepancy of political system, exchange rate region, and the different culture background. Fortunately, the mainstream culture background between the US and Australia are pretty similar, so that for an Australian firm, it would not be difficult to enter the US market to make profit while catering to consumers' preference in the host country. Therefore, both the economic and the human development measures are important to the Australian firm to consider, and the Australian firm needs to establish the specific method in reality to deal with the consumption from the host country. Now I have finished my part. Let's welcome Soil to give her speech.
Thank you, Leyan. I'm Suyo, and I'm talking about the third question, the cultural distance between the United States and Australia. Australia and the United States have many things in common culturally. Both of them are impacted by European cultures. They are both democratic, and both cultures tend to be materialistic and open to new ideas and business risks. Australians, like Americans, work hard and focus on results. Both countries have been affected by waves of immigration, albeit from different sources. Some parts of the United States, such as South Florida, are affected by Spanish culture. The recent wave of immigration from China and other Asian countries is having an impact to Australia. When they are dealing with business, they have different attitudes toward understanding time. Australian comes across as relaxed. They were prepared to wait for something to happen. There is often an attitude that it will all work out fine in the end. However, in America, time equals money and people are judged by results, and there is almost a sense of urgency to make a quick profit. So Americans may be confused the seemingly casual approach of their Australian colleagues with a lack of professionalism. This is an example that cultural distance matters in international business. I'll introduce the first theory is Hofstede's cultural dimension theory. It's a framework for cross-cultural communication. Professor Hofstede introduced 6 key aspects of national country comparison skills, including the power distance index, individualism vs collectivism, masculinity vs femininity, uncertainty avoidance index, long-term orientation versus short-term normative orientation, and indulgence versus restraint. Here is a picture of Hofstede Insight's country comparison. This figure illustrates difference in 6 Hofstede's cultural dimensions. The forward one is Australia and the last one is the United States. We can see that in these 6 dimensions, the data are almost the same, so we can see that the cultural distance between them is close. Next theory I'll introduce is Edward T. Hall's cultural dimension theory. For Hall, context refers all to information, surroundings, and action or message that give its meaning. The importance of context varies depending on the culture. In high context cultures, context is crucial for understanding, whereas in low context cultures, the context is much less relevant than the message itself. For example, in high context cultures such as Japan and Brazil, people often build lifelong social networks with business colleagues and customers, rather than just relatives and friends. These networks provide a wealth of shared histories, and customs that people often rely on when interacting with each other. On the other hand, in low-context societies, including German and the USA, interpersonal relations tend to be more distant. Internal and external groups are less exclusive, and connections are formed on an ad hoc basis. People communicate directly and clearly with honest reactions and direct response. As we can see in this graph, Australian culture is a bit higher context than the United States. However, both of them are typical low-context cultures. So the cultural distance in this dimension of these two countries is also close. Next, let's welcome Frank to talk about the industry that the United States should focus on.
Thank you, Yujing. This is Frank, and I'm going to industries the United States should focus on and series to follow when conducting international trade. First, choice of series. And Adam Smith's series of absolute advantage is concerned with the absolute cost advantage of a country in producing a certain commodity. However, with the increasing globalization and international diversion of labor, David Ricardo's series of comparative advantage better reflects the reality of modern international trade. The United States does not have an absolute cost advantage in many industries, but its comparative advantage in certain areas allows it to remain competitive in international trade. David Ricardo's series of comparative advantage argues that continuers should focus on producing and exporting those goods that are relatively low cost in international trade, which will lead to increased global production efficiency and bring mutual benefits to both sides of the trade. As a highly developed economy, the US possesses many advanced technology and a high level of human capital, which gives it a significant comparative advantage in certain areas. By studying the comparative advantage of the United States in international trade, it is possible to better understand the position and role of the United States in the global economy. The industry selection. According to David Ricardo's series of comparative advantage, the United States should focus on industries that are relatively low cost and have a competitive advantage. First, the US can focus on international trade in high-tech industry. The US has a significant comparative advantage in high-tech industries, and its innovation capacity and technological strengths are leading in the world. The US high-tech industry benefits from major industry technology, such as Silicon Valley, Boston Technology Corridor, and other regions that brings together a large number of startups, venture capital institutions, and technology giants, forming a benign innovation atmosphere. Companies in these regions have formed a comparative and competitive relationship with each other, promoting the iterative upgrading of technology. The US government has provided policy support for the development of high-tech industries, including tax incentives, research funding, and intellectual property protection. In addition, the US government also promotes the internationalization of high-tech industries by signing free trade agreements with other countries and lowering trade barriers. As a result, the US has a stronger cost advantage and competitive advantage in high-tech industries than other countries. Second, the United States can focus on the development of financial services in international trade. The United States has the largest financial market in the world, with the New York Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ. The New York Stock exchange ranking first and second in the world in terms of market capitalization, respectively. The huge scale of the US financial market provides a broad space for the development of financial services. The large market size and higher liquidity greatly reduce the cost of capital and improve market efficiency, which can give full play to competitive advantage. In addition, the US financial services industry has been a leader in financial innovation, introducing numerous financial products and services, such as derivatives, electronic trading, and financial technology. More, the US financial regulatory system encourages innovation and competition while ensuring market stability. Finally, the education services industry should also be encouraged more in international trade. The US has a world-class higher education system, including top research university and renowned privacy institutions. These institutions are global leaders in terms of educational quality, research capacity, and innovative strengths, and attract a large number of international students to study there. As a result, the US education industry has a stronger competitive advantage than other countries and can play a full role in international trade. Thank you.
And now I'm gonna introduce the last part, the US trade policy tour and spotted international trade series. And about first one, I gotta introduce about the United Trade Policy series. Like I mentioned, the specific trade policy instruments employed by the government and reasonable that may upend them may change according to various domestic and international factors, policy priorities, and politics considerations. And now let's go to the first part about trade tours. Trade tours usually include tariff, quotas, subsidies, and trade agreements. And in this part, I'm going to introduce three of them. That is tariffs, quotas, and trade agreements. And first about tariffs. Like the U.S. government usually has imposed the tariff on certain imported goods to protect domestic industries, like the Trump administration's tariffs on steel and aluminum import in 2018, and the subsequent trade dispute with China are example of tariff as a trade policy too. Like the second one is about quotas. The quotas the U.S. government used quotas restricting the quantity of imports. I could give an example that is the U.S. government imposed quotas on certain agricultural products to protect domestic farmers and ensure the food security. This measure not only include now, since the 19th century, the U.S. government has used this method to protect the domestic farmers. Like about the last one about the U.S. government like to take advantage of the trade agreement, like the U.S. government participate in the various trade agreements such as the North American Free Trade Agreement and the World Trade Organization. That's I go to significant parts that the U.S. government participates the trade agreement to benefit themselves, and this agreement aim to promote the trade liberalization and remove trade barriers between countries. And that's all about this presentation, and I give the reference list at last. Here's the reference we use in this presentation. And that's all about this presentation. Thank you for watching.